Cool. So today we have another session of Know Your Operator. This time around, we're hosting Launchnodes. Very happy to have with us Rajesh and J.P. Rajesh is here, but J.P. the CEO will do most of the talking. Like always, we have Alon with us as well, so it's going to be quite an interesting topic. Just before we get started into diving into the technical stuff, I'd love to know, J.D., a little bit about you guys. Give us the introduction, your history. What were the reasons and the causes that made Launchnodes a reality?
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, we were founded in April 2020, and Rajesh, myself, and the co-founders, we've known each other for a long time, and we're engineers and builders. And in 2015, whilst I was at ThoughtWorks, I was exposed to blockchain and Ethereum, particularly, and the idea of one computer and one database that was shared was a really powerful concept. Forget the price of cryptos and up and down, but the engineering construct of perpetually having to build up all this logic outside of a database to then connect across to other logic that then connects back down to a database. That's what I spent my life doing for corporations, governments. And it was getting old, and the idea also that on the premise that data was the new gold, how is it that we could share the value of that gold out? And the idea of Ethereum and what it could be and how we could be involved was with me really from 2015. The co-founders and I worked together in that Peter and Rajesh, my other co-founders, bought my business from me in 2005. And so I used to work very much for them and rebuilding the band, as it were, for Launchnodes felt like the obvious thing to do. So since April 2020, we had a really clear and passionate view that we wanted to put staking into the hands of as many people as was possible. And when we started, one of the first things that we were aware of is that we hope lots of people are out there are buying as much Ethereum as they possibly can at $200 to $400 a unit, because we had a strong suspicion that the price would make staking harder and harder to do over a period of time. But our simple premise was that we wanted as many people to do it as possible. And we also wanted them to keep all of their returns and to have a true level of autonomy on it. So, not your keys, not your Ethereum is an expression that has gained traction. But really, we never wanted to have it such that you needed to log in to Launchnode's website or portal to have access to your staking infrastructure and have access to your node. We wanted to create a recipe for staking that was as transparent as possible, so that we gave as much value back to our clients without a dependency. And that would allow them to do more of it and to kind of take a journey with us. Because we feel that Ethereum staking and nodes, as they are right now, is in a very early infancy of what it's going to be over the next 5-10 years. I don't know if that is enough of a backstory. I can tell you, where I was born, and I don't think that's
we'll do the biography later on. We'll show the community. Awesome. Just so I'm clear about it, I mean, you're talking a lot about staking. Is it staking in general, and I mean POS staking, or are we just talking about ETH staking now?
Yes, I think that's a great question, and we firmly believe that engineering and building stuff is important, and I in no way wish to cast any aspersion on any blockchain that's out there, but we've spent 20 years putting useful working software into production, as I mentioned, for governments and banks and corporates. And scale and hyperscale from a software engineering perspective means certain things. And therefore, Ethereum for us is the most meaningful solution, and we are an investment grade Ethereum staking specialists for individuals and institutions.
So yeah, I mean, I can see a lot of similarities between what you guys do and what block staking is about. So I think the vision behind it is follows the same logic. That's very interesting to see that you guys come from a technological background, but not necessarily from an Ethereum technological background. I mean, you see the value in what Ethereum can become, as you mentioned, early stages. I'd love to know a little bit what you guys think or how you envision the staking on Ethereum is going to be in the next couple of years. I mean, couple of months and couple of years.
I think that right now we have a situation whereby there's almost an asymmetry of knowledge and information. So, our customers across the world who are using us to stake know a lot, either in terms of the financial outcome they're looking to hope to get from Ethereum and Ethereum staking, or from a technology perspective. What I think is going to happen, and we think very firmly that Ethereum is going to become a general purpose technology, and therefore it will transform everything in much the same way the internet did. And if you were in 1997 trying to explain what the internet was going to be in 2005, you would sound like a nut job. And in the same context, I think in terms of our aspirations and view on what Ethereum is going to be in 5-6 years, what do you mean and how do you define changing everything? Well, I think the best analogy is the internet and the stage where it was at when we were all signing into AOL. You guys all look too young to know what that looked like, but and using Mosaic and having to install special email clients and all that sort of stuff, through to where it was in 2005 when broadband was firmly established and everyone was hitting Wi-Fi for the first time, through to then social media in 2007 transforming the experience of being human. And I think that Ethereum ends up taking a layer of that into the construct of finance. And one of the data visualizations that we are really big on is if you look at the global economy in terms of what it is and the different sectors and how big they are in terms of circles, the derivatives market dwarfs all economic activity of the world put together many times over. And so just that single use case in Ethereum, I think it's inevitable, but it provides a scope of use and the transparency that comes about from a derivatives market that's available in a shared database that everyone has access to, again, transforms the very nature of economic activity in terms of what you can predict, in terms of the value of data, and how that that data and transactions are secured on a shared database, and what the value of that network is.
That was a very, very good answer. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the previous calls that we've had, but Alon usually compares this to the treasury bond. So if we're talking about decentralized finance as a possibility on Ethereum, all the building blocks for the different DeFi products, then the fundamental staking on Ethereum could be compared to the T-bill bond. So it's actually interesting.
I think there's another layer. I started talking with a few people about it, which is, I think we're getting to a point where less and less people will actually interact directly with Ethereum, the blockchain. I think you'll see more and more services. If you look today, the L2s are blowing up. The different bridges between the different blockchains are blowing up. I think less and less people will interact with Ethereum itself, which is a really, really good sign, because you want people to interact with the apps, quote unquote, of Ethereum rather than the protocol itself. And so as we're moving from that, you'll see better user interface, better user experience. You'll see more adoption. And so I think that's very much in line with the vision of Ethereum. If you take that into consideration, it makes total sense that the Ethereum Foundation is so keen on kind of the fundamentals, where a lot of the other blockchains are less concerned about the fundamentals and more concerned about the features. So it's an interesting thing to see, I think.
I think it is, and I think that you're absolutely spot on that the Ethereum Foundation are kind of quietly doing the hard work they're not so much on the yachts and in Miami doing the whole diamond encrusted Lamborghini thing, because the fact is that to use software at scale and hyperscale, for it to work, to allow people to build on top of you, requires a level of rigor and systems thinking and then to do that in a decentralized fashion as well, like on top of that being a hard problem and use case to think through. The idea of, there's no there's no scrum master. There's a decentralized team solving problems in new ways. I think that they're really arresting that, and that's I think one of the things I hope, and I think it's not that we look at Ethereum and will not engage with anything else. We're perpetually looking at all of the other coins, and for some of our institutional clients, in depth and at scale, I would say as well, from a staking perspective. But in terms of what is the exam question? The exam question is, how do we allow more and more people to participate directly through node ownership in staking Ethereum? And I think that comes back down to the other bit, which is that the idea that staking Ethereum, and when I first came across the idea of proof of stake in 2015, for me, it was immediately clear that in a world where investors are hunting for yield, and where individuals, both in terms of the middle class in developed countries and in developing countries even more so, are hunting for bread, the idea that you could stick a pot of capital onto a network, and as that utility of that network grows, you can earn an interest rate in perpetuity from a fixed pool of capital that's kind of inflation proof. This is the social impact of that is enormous, right? And that was always part of the key construct for me. And
I mean, that's an amazing point. Obviously, I think, in my opinion, that the road to a world just like you described is long and hard. We're not there yet. No, specifically because, and you mentioned it earlier when you talked about the type of clientele that you're seeing, or how difficult it is to onboard a new client. I think it's, people talk about the ease of use. People talk about a bridge into the crypto world. When you're talking about the fundamentals, sometimes I ask myself, who needs access to layer one? Who needs access to Ethereum? If we're building on layer two, building on layer three, should we reserve access to, launching a node, participating, being a part of the network to a selected few, or how do you guys vision it, moving forward?
So we have always wanted mass participation for Ethereum staking. As the price of Ethereum started moving north, we launched Staking Club, which is a product that allows people to pool together and who sort of have to know each other. So it has to be a trusted set of individuals who pool together with 32 Ethereum and then can launch a node with us. And we provide a set of contracts that allow them to do that pooling and then support them through the launching of that node. And I think that comes back to your point is, what is the soup, the ingredients for the soup that gets this right, that allows maximum participation, but the level of simplicity and the right user interface. These are questions we're all sort of working through right now. But I think from our perspective, the idea of creating a sense for our customers that they own their nodes in their infrastructure, that we may or may not exist, but everything is open source, everything is transparent to them, and the ownership sits with them completely and entirely, was very important. I think coming back to SSV, and one of the things that we see as being so important about the idea of taking the validator construct and that key and splitting it across multiple parties is, yes, you can do that from a back-end perspective to allow for multiple infrastructures. But I think there's also the idea, and something we plan on building in conjunction with you guys, and hopefully through grants through the DAO, is the idea of, well, actually, how do we anonymously allow that to occur? And what safety can we provide in the context of that pooling to allow for 32 to come together and automatically deploy? Again, without any intermediation of, oh, well, I'm giving you some tokens, or I'm going to store your key for you. No, all of you 32 strangers connected potentially, or however many strangers connected by the knowledge of each other's Ethereum address, can you safely be stewarded to pool your own Ethereum together, run a node, have a node number, have that chunk of shared key to yourself, and away you go. And I think that's that's what we want to build through our work with SSV, as much as providing that back end piece.
I mean, we'll get to that in a second. It's definitely one of the reasons why we're talking today. But I'd love to ask you, it's one of the problems that from the marketing perspective we've been facing when we just started with the staking space. So when you come up to a client and you tell them, listen, let's pool your ETH together in order to get to 32 ETH, stake our validator, do it the right way, protect the network, as opposed to my alternative of taking 2-3 ETH, going to a centralized exchange, doing it on my own, and then not having to deal with it again.
Yeah.
Having that issue explained, or that segment, or why it's powerful enough for you to go through the hassle of doing it, has been probably the most difficult part from my perspective so far.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sorry
about that. Yeah, I jumped into your.
No. Is that a statement or a question? I didn't, because I would agree. I can understand why that's hard. Or are you asking me what I think as to how we're going to have to solve that, or is that the question?
I'm relating 100% to what you're saying. I mean, it's been a difficult part. I don't think there's a yes or no answer to it. I think that it's an educational part. I mean, people spend a lot of time writing content explaining why it's so needed, and yet people go the easy way out. So statement / comment, but yeah, definitely can relate. I'd like to pivot. Yeah, sorry, Alon, go ahead.
I think that it's not a black and white thing. I think that there's a lot of different types of users. I think that if you look at DeFi in general, or decentralized finance product, I don't know if staking fits directly into DeFi, although I think it is. I think what we saw that is first, you have a lot of different people, different types of flavors of doing things. Many people do several things together. Many people can go on a centralized exchange and trade, and can go to Uniswap as well. I think the biggest advantage DeFi protocols have is interoperability, which doesn't really exist in traditional exchanges. I think the way we saw DeFi explode is when you can combine different services and interact with them directly. So not necessarily. So what I guess I'm trying to say is that not necessarily the decentralization and non-custodianship parts of DeFi appeal to people, although they are kind of the fundamental thing. What appealed to people in the end is what you can actually build with it. And so once I think DeFi kind of moved away from trying to replace centralized exchanges and kind of invent something completely new, then that was the point where people started to adopt. And I think you'll continue to see centralized exchanges doing staking. I think that's going to be a big part of staking, but I think it's our responsibility to get and build stuff which are kind of the decentralized counterparts to that, but find the right way to do that. And I think the right way to do that is dependent a lot about interoperability, the ability to interact between different services and create a whole greater than its parts.
No, I'd absolutely agree. And the other bit from our sort of our worldview on what staking is that we see exchanging us through their engineering teams, and we just provide that L3 support because it's completely self-service model that we allow. If you're informed, you would buy nodes from Launchnodes and only speak to us if you have some questions around scales and ratios and whatever. But it also allows us to support institutions that are not necessarily as technically well equipped as exchanges. And I think your point around DeFi, I actually wouldn't class staking as decentralized finance. Maybe that's wrong, but in my head, I wouldn't. I think what decentralized finance is, and the reason its power is so great, is that the first one in the context of a money market in Compound, I mean, before MakerDAO, but the kind of the idea of a money market was exclusively the reserve of the kind of institutions that back in 2008, 2009, created the financial crisis in the idea and the idea that you could put your spare money into a market and someone else could take their borrowing out on a short-term rate and then drop it back in autonomously. It's a great idea, and the market theory definitely holds, but it was only available to institutions that were massively sophisticated using hundreds of millions of dollars. What Compound allowed for is for you and me to do that with $50, right? And I think that what we've seen is some of these financial innovations over the past 20 years that were exclusively for the preserve of institutions, based on the fact that it's only for them that they're safe and they can manage the risk, now being brought through DeFi to individuals, and I think that's a very exciting prospect. And again, the guardrails are off. You don't want individual consumers to get burnt, but I also think that there's merit in not holding that power and opportunity of returns to a tiny group of institutions as well, as many of us do. So
I'd like to pivot a little bit to, we have a lot of tech savvy users, and obviously you guys with years of experience in with anything that has to do with information, like you mentioned at the beginning, information is gold. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your technological setup, why you guys chose AWS, a little bit about Prism perhaps, run us through your setup.
Yeah, I think what we wanted to do is to, one, be transparent about all of the component parts of how we allow clients to stake. And in terms of AWS, our view was always that we would be upon all public cloud marketplaces, right? We started with AWS because we felt it was, it's an anchor for those who are innovating. We'll be in Azure in the next few months to allow for those more corporate traditional organizations to be involved. And we're working with multilateral organizations right now. So it will be of real benefit to them. We can talk a little bit about that later. In terms of using Prismatic, I think Raoul and Preston at Prismatic sort of have, that similar war experience of building at scale and hyperscale, and therefore the engineering practices and rigor they bring allow us to be able to recommend them to clients and to use their software, knowing the outcomes, knowing the risks, sort of transparently, and being able to share that. And the fact that they've brought all this software engineering rigor to what they're doing means that right now it's a very compelling proposition. That is not to say there is not a problem with client diversity. I think there is, and I think that some of their thinking also around the idea of, well, actually, we can have a beacon chain that is interoperable with other clients is a great, start, an olive branch, because I don't think they themselves want to be this dominant. It's just come about that way. So I think, in the spirit of learning, improving, and changing, this is one of the problems that we as a community have got to solve, and in no way will Launchnodes exclusively forever be with Prismatic. But right now, when you're talking about staking a single node, representing what $78,000-$90,000 worth of value, probably more than that, actually, close to $100,000 worth of value. The idea that I in any way want to jeopardize my ability for my client to maximize their returns and to get the best possible support, because I'm promoting client diversity over my clients' financial returns and ability to earn. That trade-off doesn't make sense at this stage. But I think client diversity is a problem. I think we're there, open-eyed and ears to different solutions that are out there. I also feel comfortable that Prismatic are not trying to, keep it to themselves. That they're doing the right things to expand that diversity, and yeah, that's a good thing. I think. I don't know if that
answers the question perfectly. Alon's been doing a lot of work when it comes to client diversity. You have mentioned the fact that you're going for multiple cloud providers, which is, let's call it the step one towards a more diverse ecosystem. Alon, could you talk a bit about how you think SSV fits into that module, perhaps how that could help promote client diversity?
Yeah, sure. So I think that SSV is kind of the perfect maybe technology to just kind of enhance or maybe even accelerate not just client diversity, by the way. When we're talking about diversity, client diversity is one parameter. But if you want to get to kind of a multifaceted, diverse setups, you'll need to consider geolocations. You'll need to consider different cloud providers, Ethereum clients or nodes, what validator client you're using. So all of those kind of different parameters or different degrees of diversity are important. And so you can do so much with a single setup as we have today, right? If you consider that you only can run one validator client, that you're really set to one validator client, that's a parameter you can't really change in today's technology. You could use multiple beacon nodes with that client, validator client, so that's fine, and people should definitely do that. But it's much harder to diversify in terms of cloud providers and geolocations and so on. With SSV, what you can do is really diversify across all of those degrees of centralization. If you take, for example, a 7 operator setup, each operator can run on different cloud, on a different geolocation, running different beacon nodes, of course, running different signers or types of signers, and so on and so forth. So you can really enhance the way you do decentralization, not just like the quote unquote control of the network, but also decentralizing the very components that actually make the network itself. And so I think that's one thing SSV can do on let's say the infrastructural level. But I think that the SSV network, what it can do is actually promote those diversity factors. So when somebody comes and chooses an operator today, they literally just ask 2 questions: how much is going to cost me, and is that operator or staking service is worthwhile, right? I think with SSV, people will start asking is not just that, but also what type of technology that or stack that operator runs, where it's located in the world, and so on and so forth. So I think that it's not just the exposure, but it's also just the very kind of the very technology that enables you to diversify those things. I think that the big thing with SSV is not necessarily for the single user, although that's a great use case. I think the biggest news here is really for the staking services or the staking platforms themselves, because today you have I would say 4 or 5 staking services that probably control close or even more than 2/3 of the network. And so having them, first of all, having a good alternative, but also having them being able to diversify and decentralize, I think that's important. Especially again, considering the context of Ethereum, considering the context of having good fundamentals to build all of the different things that Ethereum builds or Ethereum the ecosystem builds. I think SSV is definitely the right way to go about it.
Good. That was a good answer. hard to follow up on that. Yeah. Again, a quick twist. I'd like to talk a bit about something that you guys do and not many other companies in the space take part of. You guys are involved in a lot of charity work. It's very evident on your social media. It's evident in basically anything that you guys promote out there. So I'd love to hear a bit more behind, the reasoning behind it and why you guys do what you do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think social impact was something that struck me, as I mentioned earlier, the idea that from a fixed pool of capital, you could, as an individual, earn an interest rate in perpetuity that was kind of inflation proof was exciting. And so the idea of post the financial crash in 2008, 2009, what's new? What is it that's going to be a solution to this centralization of financial power? And also, if you looked in terms of Europe and the Eurozone crisis and how small Italian business account holders were banking locally with Italian banks that were physically local to them, but those banks ended up getting in trouble and investing and using those deposits in a way that was not to the interest of the deposit holders. Always made me think the idea of a group of cafe owners running their own node to support their interests or having their own bank. And again, the activity of the bank is no longer a function of lending out money and having a risk model to do that, but it's transparently supporting the network, and how those returns are being generated are completely transparent, would allow people to amalgamate pools of capital and build new models for what was originally only able to be done by a bank or an investment vehicle. And so I don't know if it's charity work. I think it's about social impact. I think it's about, I'm not exclusively suggesting that people who run nodes need to give away their returns. Although, in terms of whether you look at it in terms of Launchnodes as a business that has is lucky enough to be able to support organizations like Save the Children in some of the work they do, or I think more interestingly in terms of philanthropy and international aid budgets, the idea that actually a donor could donate capital that supports staking and issues either all of the staking returns for 5 years as their donation or 50%. And again, with solutions like SSV, the idea of applications and solutions being built whereby Ethereum staking is this engine of where the returns are coming from, but the multiple layers of value as to how they're sliced, diced, and issued and support different causes and social outcomes, I think it has got to be what excites us. The idea, we're very much not about crypto bros and diamond encrusted Lamborghinis. That's not our scene so much. Yeah. So for us, we are working with multilaterals right now on some really interesting use cases for staking, driving social impact. We can't talk about that much more than saying that, but there'll be more I think global press coverage, and we're also working with the Ethereum Foundation on that, so they're aware and they're part of that. So there'll be more coming out on that later this year.
Very cool. I mean, the common thread, whether it is the introduction about why you guys got into the space, or the technological description of the tech stack, or even the social impact work that you do, always goes back to the point of pooled staking or pooled initiative as an aggregator toward the greater good, which is actually a great segue into the last part, the future, pooled staking. I mean, you can't shake off the feeling that everything that you guys have worked towards, kind of culminates in this idea of pooled staking. So it would be great to hear a little bit from you guys. What do the future plans look like in terms of pooled staking activity?
I think pooled staking is about multiple different things. I think that where you have right now, the idea that on Yearn Finance, I can take the benefit of an algorithm that someone's put up, the platform gets some, I get some benefit, the algorithm writer gets some benefit, and largely it's kind of anonymous and completely, we have no commonality beyond that. It is one pooling scenario I see for core staking of Ethereum. We just need 32. We're going to pool together however we can to get 32, and then we go. And providing we all have direct ownership of that node and know the number and can go see its returns, then away we go. We're bonded by that goal to have 32 Ethereum on a node and to be maximizing the returns through never missing an attestation, always being on, and the network growing in value. So every year Ethereum increases in value, or if it decreases in value, to keep us staking, the interest rate goes up, right? So that's one bit. Mm-hmm. But then I think the idea of actually we're a bunch of single mums in Hull, and somehow we're going to aggregate together the 32 Ethereum and actually or multiples thereof. And not only are we going to just take out the cash returns, but these are the things that we believe in and that are important to us, and that staking is going to support and drive those, I think is another brand. And then I think that there's the idea that actually, and we're involved in this right now, is working with financial institutions to use that engine of staking to create layered financial products on top of and services. The most simple being savings accounts, but the more advanced being more complex and different types of mortgage structures and loan-based products. So I think pooled staking has a future that's bright and global and kind of categorizes down into these different kind of buckets of activity that I can see occurring. And technically, I think that SSV ends up being a big part of how that can work. So we're very excited to be part of the network on that basis. I think what Ethereum needs is great tools that have the capability to shape this expansive future when the network is going to be an ever important shared database. I think is really important. So I don't know if that answers your question specifically on pooled staking or if I've just rambled on, but
no, I mean, it's always interesting to see how you take the idea of pooled staking into multiple layers. I mean, us, for example, we're tech guys, we sit down all day long. It's hard to see the light in the end of the tunnel, but having such a vast experience in different areas, knowing exactly, the social impact that a piece of technology can bring about is always refreshing to hear, because when you're stuck so deep into the same type of code or the same ecosystem, you lose track of what it actually means,
Yeah. No, I think that I can see that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, looking up is always good, right? Both in terms of football and in terms of when you're building general purpose technology.
One of the questions that keeps on coming up when we work on, basically working on an ability to give the people an option to do pooled staking in a way. Essentially, one of the main use cases is that. Now, from the user perspective, again, I can't from the marketing, putting the marketing hat on, I can't shake off the feeling that if I'm comparing it to mining pools, which is let's say the closest thing to it, there's a reason why the average Joe would want to go with a mining pool so he can get his share or his take of the pie. So there's an actual financial reason, or more on a technological side. I me personally, as a small fish in a big pond, I cannot compete with a big guy. So I need to team up with one of these mining pools so I can get that. Whichever one offers me the best terms, that's the one I'm going to go with. Now, when it comes to actual staking, it's a little bit different, because let's say, assuming you do everything correctly, not that I'm saying that it's easy in any shape, way, or form, but assuming you do everything correctly, you get your piece of the pie. So again, it's an open-ended question, because it's a question I've been struggling with myself, and I guess we're not the only ones facing it. But how do we get to that person who's right on the fence between, why should I go ahead and do all this hassle so I can protect the network and do everything the same way? I'm not getting any financial benefit that is, different. Other centralized solutions might offer me the same terms that you're offering me. So it's really interesting for me to know how you guys are addressing or tackling that side.
So I'm predisposed to go for the individualized, narrative, but I think go the other way, which is our work to date with bigger clients and institutions. One of the things that is really important about why I might do it myself and take all the hassle is organizational mandate, right? So as an institution or even a big company that's looking to stake, what is your organizational mandate, right? If you're a company that sells toothpaste, your treasury function can do different things to maximize the money in their books. But staking, what is that in the context of buying T-bills or putting money into instruments provided by institutional banks? Like what does staking sit? And am I allowed to do it? And is it operational income, like selling lemonade, that I'm earning money for, or is it investment activity, right? And so we're seeing institutions kind of struggle and work out what that looks like and how they solve that problem and identify and clarify their mandate. I think when we now then come back to the individual, why am I going to go to an SSV solution or a pool and do that rather than just hit up Coinbase, right? Which ends up being the question. And I think the answer ends up being a function of narrative and the compellingness of that narrative to say, no, actually, JD, you love bagels and you're a whatever hobbyist bagel baker. We love bagels too, and we're a staking solution that is into bagel baking. Now, I'm being facetious there about bagel baking, but actually, what if it's about my hometown, Basingstoke, right? What if it's about my home? That's my hometown where I was born, but I've lived in Hackney for 20 years. We have food banks and issues in our local area whereby if actually staking with me supports some proportion of that going to directly affect my community and things I care about, well, then that's a way. And that isn't about the technical nature of how I'm storing keys and whether they're shared or not. That's about the narrative that compels me to act and right now potentially bank with HSBC rather than Revolut or Monzo or whoever else, right? And you're getting, again, it's like you're on the ball, you've got to look up, right? The answer's not down, it's up. I think there's a broader narrative that's going to connect people. And if you think about the people who have been buying crypto and the kind of the light bulb that goes on, it's about maybe it's about massive speculative returns, but it's also about this idea of I'm not sure that fiat money is not the VHS to the Encarta Cyclopedia or something else of money.
I would like to see that happen. That's for sure. I mean, trying to explain to a company like Revolut what the benefits of staking is difficult as is. Trying to take it to HSBC, I mean, wow. I can only imagine. I would love to be a fly in a room just to hear that conversation, try to see how that information sinks into the old school bankers. I mean, wow, hats off.
Well, hey, listen. I think there's learning to be done on all parties, and I think that we're learning some of the pains and challenges of the institutional players in terms of the old world and how they break free from some of those shackles to try and experiment and do new things with Ethereum staking. And they're learning what it means, what the opportunity is, how they can look to manage risk through hedging, and all these other different problems that we'll all have to kind of learn together. So the idea that we know everything and they just need to get it, I kind of reject, because I think we're learning lots as much as we're trying to help people embrace the new.
Yeah, we need someone to ground us sometimes. Sometimes when you're so far into cloud computing, you get your head is in the clouds.
Abstractions. Exactly. Abstractions. That's right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Why we all need to bake.
That's for sure. The last segment is kind of another open-ended question. So in the end of the day, the topics or the reason why we're meeting today is to showcase what you guys do. I think that your technological background speaks for itself, but a lot of our users, before choosing an operator, although it sounds like let's call it technological semantics, choosing between A or B based on statistics, in many cases want to see the faces behind the organization. So in a few words, sort of in your own elevator pitch, why the clients should end up choosing you guys as the operator behind their stake. Sort of why choose Launchnodes?
I think it's about truly non-custodial. We're truly non-custodial. It's not about only not ever having access to your keys or passwords. It's the fact that we want to make how we do staking completely transparent to you, which may on day one be really important to a developer, but someone who's just wanting the financial outcome of staking, it's perhaps less important. But we think nonetheless that even if you're just after the financial outcome of stake, you're on a journey of learning. And by being as transparent as possible, we hand as much value back to you as possible in the activity of staking. I think that there's obviously the ability to scale and hyperscale in your investment, grade Ethereum staking operations. I think also our focus on Ethereum differentiates us from other people who see proof of blockchains as all equal. I think our focus on Ethereum allows us to bring that transparency to it, to focus on the different architectural and technical solutions and options there are, and give our customers as much choice, especially when they're doing it at scale, in terms of validator beacon node ratios, in terms of geography, in terms of hardware and monitoring and all that stuff. Because we're focused on Ethereum, the transparency we can bring that to our clients and allow them to feel like they own it is really important. And I think that helps us work with both institutions as well as
Great answer. On a personal note, I would love to see a grant coming out of the DAO for a stake pool or some sort of a solution that you guys can come up with. I would love to see it myself. So keep an eye on that. It's definitely coming sometime in the future.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. That wraps it up. No more questions for today. I tried to keep it under an hour. I almost made it. So thank you so much for your time, JD. Thank you so much, Rajesh. He's also there in the background. I encourage you guys to check out Launchnodes, go over the stats. Their page is going to be updated very soon on the Explorer, so you guys can check out all the information and stay tuned.
Thank you, Aaron.